let's talk about the first thing, which is just, you guys have been here for quite a long time in the Arbitrum ecosystem, OGs, pioneers, however you want to word it. And you probably have a great take on what the experience has been like, building and participating in the Arbitrum ecosystem, as it were. So, we'll do it popcorn style. Just pass the mic around as you feel you have something to say. And what's the experience been like so far building on Arbitrum for 2-3 years? How much time you got?
I'm happy to go first. I would say compared to other ecosystems that I've sort of been able to participate in, Arbitrum has consistently been the friendliest and most collaborative environment to work in. There's just always been sort of, partially it has to do with kind of how the last 2 years developed. Arbitrum sort of came out at a moment where the ecosystem wasn't as much of a hype cycle. And so instead, I think everybody engaged, communities developed, and they sort of just did try to interact and work with each other. So it's just been a really positive ecosystem to work in. And that's not even touching on tech and everything else, which I'm sure we can.
Yeah, totally. I think the openness and kind of the permissionless side of Arbitrum is definitely kind of what made it a success today. Because I remember like when rollups was still a new topic, like there are other like different rollups, like having those whitelisting kind of process that only allow more established protocols to build there. But then Arbitrum was the first one who was open just for everyone to build it here. And now we're here today, which is super cool. I'm not sure if anyone still remember the good old Armenian, like it was the first kind of meme token on ARB, and I think that also helped contribute to allow like the initial round of like liquidity bootstrapping, which is super
fun. Can you hear me?
There we go. Gotcha.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've had a similar experience. It's been really great. I think we launched like a couple weeks after Nyancat or whatever that farm was that blew up. There wasn't even an ERC 1155 viewer at the time. I remember reaching out to the team to see if there were NFT bridges, and there weren't. And it ended up working out where all the NFT teams building on Arbitrum formed an island, basically, of interesting projects that were just starting up. So it was a really exciting time to build. And since then, I've gotten to know the foundation, off-chain labs a lot better. They're incredibly helpful and just, ace technologists. So it's been an awesome experience.
Awesome. Short and sweet, guys. So I guess let's talk about, that's like a very positive experience, which is all fun and dandy, but obviously building this long in any space, especially, the Web3 space, you encounter challenges. So I'm curious, what are some of the challenges that you faced that you could talk about today, and then maybe how you overcame them, or if you're still trying to overcome them, what are some thoughts there?
I can start. I think Arbitrum is definitely the DeFi L2 home base, and they will be for a long time. The vertical we're in, we're trying to help with NFT and gaming, and Arbitrum's also doing extremely well in gaming right now. The challenge is there's such a gravitas to being on L1 for NFTs. Just seeing all of the NFTs on Blur, people compare the prices to each other. It's a little spectacle that when you're on L2, it feels like sweeping the tide back with a broom often. You have to go much further than anyone else to maintain attention in an attention economy like this. That is something I'm sure anyone on an L2 would say right now. But it's just a kind of a challenge of where the market is, where there aren't a lot of organic users right now in blockchain space. Like products are very nascent. most of the people who've been here have been here for a long time, or they show up because price is the best form of marketing. So getting people, new people who are interested in blockchain-based products, while also, away from where everything else is happening, can be quite difficult.
Coin flip, Dumber, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, like echoing Joy's point, from the tech side, Arbitrum itself is the performance, the speed, the cost, and everything is definitely haven't been haven't had created any like huge challenges. I think it's more on the product side, like as a product, like how to create something that can actually get like real kind of product market fit and onboard users, and then after onboarding users, like any kind of proper ways to maintain them and also adapt to the ever-changing kind of dynamic in the market and all that. Yeah, those are kind of, I think, the challenges that all builders may be facing. Yeah.
It's kind of actually, I'll give you a challenge that I think has been there since the beginning and hasn't exactly changed, and it sort of carries on from what John and Dunbar said, which is that, so I kind of think about, new users who come into the space. They either come in now either they enter quote unquote crypto, the blockchain, and Ethereum is still a very natural landing point. But for them to now discover that there are things that you can do on L2s. Now, maybe I'm going to assume that for some of them, if it's say a mobile wallet, okay, well, there's like 100 icons here. Now, I don't know what Arbitrum is. I don't know what Optimism is, or Matic, or Metis, or, and on and on. And I think that it's the fact that it's actually forced us to do even more education to get people to understand that, well, actually, and to use that example, that, today, if Arbitrum is the DeFi and Arbitrum is gaming, how do we actually convince everyone that, that we shouldn't have to convince them, I guess, right? And how do we reduce that education curve so that their starting point is Arbitrum? How do we make it so that when their first dollar, their first ETH bridges and comes on chain into a wallet, that's on Arbitrum? Because that truly, I would say that is literally where the opportunities are. That is where the most interesting things that are being built within the Ethereum ecosystem exist. But it's just hard to explain how Arbitrum is really not just an L2. It sits so far today apart from the rest of the L2 universe. But yeah, it's just bundled together as L2s.
Yeah, it's true. I guess like the overall macro of just adoption in Web3 is the one of the big challenges everyone's just always facing and trying to solve and make streamline more easily. Different verticals have their own challenges in that. Like, gaming has its own account abstraction. The UX UI part of gaming is super important. Beyond just a DeFi app. So it is interesting to see how those things kind of get addressed and how different projects are approaching that uniquely while leveraging the technology that's available to them. One thing that I think is important to discuss, I guess, is the way your ecosystems that you're involved with and the projects you're building are involved with the Arbitrum DAO, and I guess how you guys navigate that. It is DAO Day, so we'll dive into a bit of the DAO discussion here. I'm curious if you guys have had to maybe lean on your community a bit more when it comes to helping you participate as key stakeholders in the Arbitrum ecosystem with the DAO. I'm sure, John, you have some thoughts there. Oh, you're muted. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me? Is there feedback? I had to take my headphones out.
No.
Okay. So we formed Arbitrum Representative Council, the ARC, from the Treasurer community, and also has a member who is part of helping with financial transparency with the DAO. They help us because we're a DAO as well. So we have our own governance we have to be on top of. So being a really informed delegate, we really needed to utilize the community to stay on top of the proposals. We have a weekly meeting as a group where we go through them and we talk about if it's germane to what we see our expertise as a delegate. We try to be really open that not everyone should delegate to us thinking that we're going to weigh in on every issue. We have, we'd like to be across things that are super relevant to us as an ecosystem, including our partners, and then also just core protocol questions and just core DAO questions that would affect every project equally. So even narrowing our focus down, relying on the community has been crucial. And it's also been helpful for increasing the decentralization in our DAO, because every DAO has a centrifugal force moving it towards centralization just to keep the chaos under control. So things like this are super helpful.
Yeah, you definitely need stewards, for lack of a better term, to help a decentralized, autonomous organization kind of flow and get stuff done. And there are a lot of stewards in the Arbitrum ecosystem. The foundation is just one hand of many. So it's great that you guys are taking a very active approach on that, and kind of having a council within a council for a DAO within a DAO. It can get pretty complex for people who come into the Web3 space because they heard about Bitcoin or Ethereum, and then they're like, whoa, there's a lot here, and every part of it it runs so deep and has so many layers and has so many really innovative players involved. So we do what we can with those layers to clarify the noise, and going back to CoinFlip's point, hopefully helping to make the friction of adoption smoother as well, and onboarding. CoinFlip or Dumbbird, do you have any thoughts on what are some ways that you guys have been able to juggle the participating in the Arbitrum DAO while still focusing on being contributors to what you're building?
I mean, keeping a close eye on the forum is definitely just a good way to stay in the loop, because a lot of time building the product itself and then being in the ecosystem is kind of just like two things are like very close together. And then in terms of like Mux, like our approach is definitely kind of less sophisticated at this moment, and just like more like an internal company with like different advisors and builders and contributors coming together, kind of like just sharing different opinions from like a builder perspective, community member perspective, and also holder perspective, and find that balance, and then kind of land on the decisions for all the proposals there.
Yeah, the forum is a great source of truth, so to speak. You can go to Snapshot and Tally to just get involved in the votes directly, but the forum is kind of where the pie gets baked, if as it were. So, CoinFlip, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's probably been a task that I've been failing at in terms of finding that balance, because it definitely feels like the DAO has consumed a lot of bandwidth for be contributors of protocols, but also, I mean, I think in time even communities have become more and more engaged with it, which actually I think is positive. So similar to what John's done at Treasure, we're sort of starting the process of really trying to further decentralize our process. So we kind of did a short 6-month window where tokens have been delegated right now, currently to me, for example, from the GMX ecosystem. But we're working to hopefully stand up a small committee of community members who will be able to be more engaged, both be able to then act sort of as delegates, but without then, I think with generally being from the GMX community, but not strictly then advocating only for GMX, and then leaving others within our protocol to advocate on behalf potentially of the protocol itself as well, because there's a lot of duality in some of the roles that a lot of us are taking through three delegates, three protocols are represented here who collectively have, I don't know, 40 million or some odd votes on the DAO. Most of that's treasurer, to be fair, but so it's one of those interesting ones. But I think that, one thing that we've definitely found is that, everybody who's been involved, especially from the builder standpoint, the reason everybody has been so aligned is I think we've all felt that, Arbitrum has been such a big part of our growth story. And the fact that we have this opportunity to also contribute now back to Arbitrum and really help to define the direction it moves in and, create this environment that we think can help build hopefully the next GMX and MUX and Treasure alongside us, and hopefully maybe even supersede us, it's super valuable. And so I think, we in some ways are maybe the best users of the protocol if I think of it as Arbitrum. So it's wonderful actually being in a spot where we also have a chance to have that voice.
Yeah, I mean, it is really tough because, there are delegates who are basically just individuals representing, a huge mind share, and then there's also projects itself that are delegates like Treasure, which adds another layer of complexity, especially because their ecosystem is governed by a DAO, and that kind of adds to the thing we touched on earlier, which is this layering of governance and how complex that can be. And even in the Arbitrum framework around governance, it's there is a lot of time given for these proposals and things to be discussed, but even that isn't a lot of time. You know what I mean? The time horizon of the forums can be anywhere from a few days of discussion to, I've seen as long as a month before, with back and forth if people are trying to really take the feedback on and deliver a more holistic proposal to at least a snapshot before moving along to on-chain voting. And then, each of those timelines is pretty quick too. But I've participated and seen DAOs where the whole process from proposal to finish line is like a week, and I'm like, that definitely wouldn't work here. There's a lot of participants, and to CoinFlip's point, where you're all juggling full-time roles and real life on top of that without giving that as much detail as it would need. But it's tough. Some of the challenges that I've seen being a steward in the space here is, some proposals get very last second feedback, and then it throws the whole thing, it just can set back the whole process. If it's for example, somebody makes a proposal, there's a lot of discussion, feedback, they address the feedback, and then they're about to go to a snapshot vote, and then a huge delegate offers a last second feedback that is very key to what could be this make or break for them. So yeah, it's kind of cool. That's a challenge, but it's governance, right? It's the will of the DAO, so you gotta step back and take the punches. But it's part of what we're all kind of interested in here and why we're participating in this space for more or less. But thanks for sharing your guys' kind of takes on how you've been flexible with, I guess, juggling that, because I think it's overlooked a lot, and people online can be pretty ruthless when it comes to participation in governance. And it's good to see everyone's trying their best, and it's still early days, and I think that's a good segue into the next topic here, which would be kind of discussing. So Arbitrum DAO is still in its first year, which is quite in infancy. I'm curious what you guys feel the pace has been like. Has it been a little too slow out the gate? I know there was a lot of feedback around that in the community. Is the pace good now? How do you feel the pace of I know it's a broad question, what does the pace of the DAO even mean? But what's your guys' take on that?
So maybe I'll go first. I think
Go ahead.
yeah, personally speaking, I do feel the speed is reasonable, because given how the governance is being handled at this moment, I think Arbitrum DAO is definitely one of the most centralized at this moment, because when it comes to decision making and also like proposal, like posting, all that, like all the committee members coming together, like this is one of the few DAOs that we can really have somewhere like when the builders can create a proposal and everyone come together for real conversation, everyone build relationships, and then eventually pushing for some like very impactful actions. So I think, yeah, when it comes to like the overall like speed, you always need to be balanced with kind of the like how decentralized it is. And in this case, I think as a DAO together, like based on kind of what we have seen from the whole STIP process, it's definitely kind of making the everyone closer, because I mean, other than the benefits of having grants being distributed, it's more about like the connections being built within the ecosystem. Like all the builders know each other better, and then eventually like build better products, better kind of collaboration. So in that case, I think the net benefits from the process of just exploring this kind of process is more beneficial, can be more beneficial than just like doing something really fast and then maybe make some maybe huge mistakes along the way. So.
Coin flipper, John, you want to add to that?
Coin flip, you can go. I've been going first on all of them.
I really apologize. What was the question again?
Here we go. We're juggling the DAO and work in real life. See, it's happening live. You're
yeah, I will admit that I was doing some work on the side there.
No, I'm with you. That's my life. So yeah, basically we're just talking about, with the DAO being in its first year, it's a newborn governance system, but quite robust out the gate. How do you feel the pace has been? Have things moved a bit slow?
I think a few things. I think the early days was a lot of complacency. I'm trying to remember if it was Chris from L2 Beats or who was saying that, every time somebody says, oh, well, the DAO should do something, well, you're the DAO. Like that's for us to do. And I think that is something that definitely took time for everyone to get their head wrapped around. I think that since that's happened, we've now dramatically taken up the amount of activity. We're obviously still focused on sort of big swing items because that's kind of the only things that we're set up to deal with right now because we just don't have the infrastructure yet. So yeah, I mean, I'm actually pretty excited by seeing some of the, for the lack of a better term, bureaucracy, admin, other infrastructure getting in place in the coming months, because I think that will hopefully then really set us up along with obviously the foundation, which is there to support, for us to really be able to now take all these ideas that everybody's been talking about and implement them. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not actually sure there's ever been a DAO experiment as big as Arbitrum, where from day one, the protocol, the DAO really does control the protocol. It has financial resources that are meaningful to be able to go after this mission. And you are actually trying to address stuff that has never actually been dealt with, I would say. I mean, if I think about the original quote unquote DAO that was there, it was just going to make investments, do a little bit of check-in and stuff. It wasn't going to be as ambitious an effort as this. I mean, this is akin to taking, honestly, probably a lot of the day-to-day activity, even of say the Ethereum Foundation, and sticking a lot of it into a DAO as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the pace has been good, and it's been a pretty exemplary DAO. There's generally a race to deplete the funds as fast as possible. That's happened in other DAOs. I think this group has been thoughtful to not do that. And it just takes time to set a culture. Yeah, I don't know if there's any right way to do it. It's hard because especially with this many stakeholders, the first person to put a proposal out has no idea what the culture is, what it's going to be. And at best you can do temperature checks with people. So that's intimidating. And I appreciate everyone who got the ball rolling in that regard. I think the DAO's doing really well.
Yeah, I think what I like personally is, I can't remember when it was, CoinFlip. I know you were involved in the discourse, so to speak, but might have been in springtime after a couple months. But there was some, frustrated threads out there. It's a tough one to say, about kind of the pace of things, and I guess like bottlenecking feedback on the forum, and shutting things down without any constructive feedback to get the ball rolling. It's always heated in those kind of behind the screen Twitter, X, crypto Twitter space, I guess you call it. But I think it really helped kind of light a fire under not just the delegates, but even just your everyday participants and even smaller users. But it's cool to see how from there the pace has really started to snowball. And in my mind, when the DAO and the foundation first launched, in my mind, I was like earmarking a year. I was like, all right, in about a year, I think the pace and the structure will kind of start to create itself. And I think we're ahead of schedule based on what I was thinking. So that's kind of cool to see. I mean, there's no right or wrong to that, since all DAOs have different structures, different size of and participations, values, and it's all kind of, we could say, quote unquote, experimental still. But yeah, the pace is going. It's pacing. And what's interesting is seeing like, how serious people are taking frameworks, which is another, hot conversation piece on, not enough frameworks, too many frameworks, and when and where those can kind of overlap and create like not just top down funnels, but sideways that cross between different frameworks. I know that was a complicated sentence, but that is how complicating it really is to keep the pace of things, going. But let's talk about, I guess, the builders in the Arbitrum ecosystem now, and future builders. There was a panel on STIP, which is, probably one of the bigger proposals we've seen from a more holistic ecosystem support side. And it's definitely stimulated a lot of spin-offs and interesting conversations on how to move forward with any future ones or existing ones. So aside from STIP, I guess, how do you guys see the Arbitrum DAO supporting builders beyond that? If you have any thoughts on that.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're first. Sorry.
Okay. I have like one concern with how I think it'll likely play out unless the DAO is conscientious about it. Well, I mean, every group, when you throw too many people in a room together, you get the lowest common denominator as the result, because you end up with something with everyone likes it, but no one loves it. And I experience this all the time. The DAO, it's our DAO, this one's it's much bigger, and it's a really hard thing. But there's another effect that happens in crypto-specific groups where, when there aren't a lot of organic users, you have a lot of people betting on 1000Xs. And what ends up happening is we've kind of locked ourselves into this cyclical tragedy where, there are a lot of projects that probably could have and should have achieved network effect at some point, but the incentive for the users to just support the fork, because there's no price discovery on the coin. It can go up a lot further. And we end up just being crabs in a bucket as builders, where, the only time people ever hear about crypto is when it starts mooning again. And then it's not even really talk about the products being made. I'm not really sure how sustainable the industry is the longer this goes on. And Arbitrum, just being like, candid about what I've seen with decentralized groups and what fear I have here is I really applaud the foundation and OCL's decision to decentralize that much funding to the DAO. But I also notice an undercurrent of this framework picking up where the DAO doesn't want to pick winners. And Two things could happen. One is you just incentivize everyone without any proven success, loyalty to the network. And then you have the chorus of voices who are all cheering for their particular coin. So then you just take, the group would end up just being a monkey throwing darts at that point. And the other is that Arbitrum as an ecosystem, all of us, even our different niches, we're competing against other ecosystems that are structured very differently. And they are all taking concentrated bets on particular players. So if we just use the funds where we spread them out across all projects and kind of normalize this, everyone is equal and we can't pick winners. You know, every Arbitrum project then is going up against a competitor who a rival chain is offering like 50 million, 100 million sometimes to build that exact thing. And that's very difficult. That's intimidating. And I would hope the Arbitrum ecosystem doesn't go down that path, because I think a lot of builders would end up leaving in that circumstance.
Yeah, it's a delicate spot, because what you don't want to do is become that ecosystem that invests in so many opportunities, but then doesn't get to reap the benefits. And I think that is one of those challenges that you try to balance out. But having said that, I definitely think that, you know, I've seen different ecosystems find different ways to go about this, and maybe that is not just looking at only grants. Maybe it is us looking at making sure that there is alignment. Maybe that alignment could be, you know, from a token standpoint or from a, you know, eventual upside, irrespective of where these protocols move. It could be about us making sure that we have a clear path for where the biggest and brightest can find a spot within our ecosystem and continue to operate. So, for example, app chains, other environments, ways that they can leverage, ways that you clearly know that if you build and if you grow in this ecosystem, there is going to be immense opportunity. And I don't want to be tribalistic, but I think there'll be a point probably in the coming years, if Arbitrum continues to hold its leadership position, I think you can start to say, well, actually, no, we will just focus on those that started here, because growing in-house, you know, is the way to be going about this, because we won't then need to be saying, well, are we pulling people from other ecosystems in terms of builders? The builders will have had every opportunity put in front of them to build first here in Arbitrum. And then I guess the remaining pieces, you know, making sure that we have that strong network effect in general, which I think will continue to bring in all builders. But yeah, John, I mean, I definitely know that, like, yeah, listen, the offers that you get for pulling your user base and for what you've done elsewhere are crazy. And I think it's crazy in the context that people who are building in chains are potentially looking at value accretion to them that are manifolds of what any of us individual protocols theoretically command, despite the fact that protocols collectively are what make a chain a place that you would actually come and use. So it's an interesting challenge for the DAO to tackle.
Yeah, totally. I think echoing both of your points, I mean, yeah, this space is definitely super interesting, because when it comes to products, there's so many different metrics to consider, like product fundamentals, like including like the features like itself is important for kind of getting users, but also like token itself, like the whole price movement can also be a huge factor. And also incentives can play a big part in like whole bootstrapping on both user and liquidity side as well. And I think, yeah, in terms of, yeah, as a DAO to support kind of different builders, different projects, should we do it all equally, or should we like, I mean, I think it's sometimes not necessarily just picking winners, because sometimes when you have something that works in the ecosystem, it makes sense to double down on it for you to push for more adoption and more liquidity, right? So in that case, I think essentially as we involve more on the framework side, potentially maybe there can be like a framework for like more established protocols with a certain threshold of users and TVL and stuff. And then there can be separate programs for also continue to fund innovation, because I mean, it's definitely good to have like as diverse like sectors as possible on the ecosystem. Because now, like definitely in Arbitrum, yeah, we have pretty. I think we're one of the epicenter for Pertexes and also for gaming. But what about like maybe new stuff like it's popping out like DPIN, RWA, all that stuff? Yeah, it'd be good to having like all sort of different programs to. I mean, to for the more established one to continue onboard more users and TVL, and also for new builders to find a home to really can build the product they want to build here as well.
Yeah, I like how you say double down there. I think we've all invested at one point. And when you become a builder, you don't get as much time to think about it. But like, yeah, I mean, you add to your winners. You don't cut your winners. But everything in it, the way a DAO works, and just through the group, is you end up being the worst investor of all time, where you just make all of the novice mistakes, where you cut your winners and you spread yourself way too thin. But if something pops up organically, you should double down on it. Yeah.
I think something that's interesting to consider when it comes to investing in ecosystem that people don't talk about from a strategy point is time. Like we're all investing time more than anything, and time is our biggest form of betting. We're betting all our time in certain areas, whether it's DeFi, gaming, the DAO. Like it's all relevant to kind of the holistic path forward. So that's just something to always keep I find helpful to keep in the back of the mind is, how am I diversifying my time, not my assets? My time is the biggest asset. So just a fun thought to leave people with before we get to the last question that we have time for here, which is basically, you guys have, you three as builders in the Arbitrum ecosystem have been around since long before the inception of the DAO. And I'm curious, what you guys think with everything considered and potentially moving forward, if you think the DAO has had a net benefit in the impact of the Arbitrum ecosystem so far. There's hopefully no backfires on this, on what you choose to say.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is definitely the network effect. I think for other ecosystem rollups that we're observing, maybe there's like a certain big players, and then all the protocols kind of either have to collaborate with them or build on top of them. From Arbitrum, we actually can have all those, like there's a lot like community, like just pure kind of builder kind of projects and coming together, right, and building like this whole setup like like GMX, for example. There's like so many good protocols building on top of them, and like in multiple sectors, right? Like just having a network effect like this from, I mean, after having the DAO, especially kind of after having the STFP program, making everyone come together, I think that's like a huge benefit for the ecosystem in general. And I think it's gonna, as we continue exploration, it's gonna have like long-lasting kind of good impact on the ecosystem.
Anything you guys want to add to that? Network effect?
Yeah, no, I think that I think the DAO has been a net positive. I mean, not even a net. It's been a positive for the growth of Arbitrum, because as opposed to this general idea that we're a community and we're building this, I think it's made it feel very tactile. Everybody's been able to get that sense of how everybody is engaged, and it's brought a lot of attention. I mean, something like STIP, which originated from within the DAO and really was a big attempt to really show all other ecosystems that we are here to play. We are here to attract the biggest builders, bring the users in, really make that push. I'm not sure. I mean, I think we've seen so many ecosystems where there was a foundation or somebody else who just announced a grant program. They put out a press release. It happened. I don't think any of them had the same impact that this did, because this really felt very, grassroots and from bottom up. So I think that I think has been a super positive. Not been great for my sleep schedule, but otherwise, the DAO's been great.
when has either building or being a user in Web3 been good for anyone's sleep schedule, though? You know, the second you put that on your radar, it's a big hobby or a career.
Yeah, I agree with the others. It's been hugely positive, and I actually didn't know that much about GMX at the time. We were both building in parallel, so I can't remember when they came. I'm sorry about that, but so like when Treasure came, we thought there would never be an Arbitrum token because they said there wouldn't be. It was kind of just this nice surprise later that this hugely organic ecosystem now has the largest DAO treasury in crypto, and it's like an engaged group of stakeholders that now has more firepower than everyone. And if you compare this to like Solana, and I'm not, I think Solana is having a resurgence right now from what I've seen. I'm not actually sure the reasons of that, but so caveating that the Solana under SBF, none of that was organic. That was them just throwing money at any developer to pretend to be a developer until they had enough coins for people to speculate on, is a very blunt way of saying it. Arbitrum was the exact opposite. And yet it became the leading L2. And now it has all this ammunition to, it's a complete slam dunk if the DAO does it well.
Yeah, and I guess my take on that would also be, if the goal is a decentralized chain and facilitating the values of Ethereum, which was the rubric from the get-go, regardless of short-term implications, a DAO is the main path we all know to achieve that. So the intention is net positive at scale for decentralizing a chain, unless someone proposes some new way that is a revolution to all that. We're all going to be trucking away here in the Arbitrum DAO and ecosystem respectively. Yeah, thanks a lot for your guys' time and kind of giving that so-called OG wisdom that really helps new builders coming into the space, and Arbitrum kind of put things into perspective. Went a little bit over time. We probably could have gone for another hour, but I believe we're gonna get into the breakout sessions now, which I know some people have been waiting for all day. So yeah, thanks a lot for joining, guys, and we'll see some of you in the breakout session.